G'day people, the reason I'm doing this video is because there seems to be a complete lack of understanding amongst the people doing the traffic management for the Fremantle traffic bridge about what wayfinding signage should be put up for cyclists. And this has been the case for the last year. It's been very frustrating, hence this video. In fact, there's going to be a couple of videos in this series explaining a number of different points. The first one is that the maps of people who are traveling in a southerly direction are all upside down. That is, they're not oriented to the ground. They're all facing north when you're actually looking to the south. The second thing is the maps haven't been updated to remove the detour along Queen Victoria Street down towards the bridge. Now, about 6 months ago, barriers were put in place so that you can no longer walk or cycle across the bridge, but the detours have not been updated to reflect that. And in fact, the useless loop detour, as I call it, should probably never have been put on the maps, but it's still there, and it's directing people in a very strange direction. And it's, I think in the next video, or a video in the near future, I'll show just how dangerous this is and why it needs to be updated ASAP. Now, the third thing is there's no reason why a lot of information should be put on a single map. These maps could be split according to the different types of users or stakeholders. For instance, bus passengers who want to use the bus stops on Queen Victoria Street could have one set of maps, and cyclists and pedestrians who want to cross the bridge or get across the other side of the river could be given a different set of maps. And that might be part of the reason why there's this confusion around point 2. The next one is that I discovered on the weekend that both Apple Maps and Google Maps have not been updated to show both the cycle path closures and the road closures, and that would certainly lead to people being quite disorientated if they're using these wonderful mapping features on their smartphones. But the reason I'm doing this is these maps are just really symptomatic of the poor quality of the cycle detours for this project. The Borloo Bridge project had some fantastic detours set up in terms of permanent paths and really good signage, and the maps, the maps were okay, but you didn't really have to use them because the quality of the signage was so good. Unfortunately, with this Fremantle traffic bridge project, it's been an absolute shocker from day one. There's been some small improvements along the way, but it's just been a frustrating experience. There's probably at least a year and a half of this to go. So it'd be nice to get some acknowledgement of the problems now and clean them up. Now, here's one of the offending maps on the northern side of the project. And the issue is, you can see over in the top right-hand corner, there's a legend and there's a north arrow pointing straight up. The problem is we are facing south. So this map is almost 180 degrees out of orientation, and trying to follow this detour in your head when you have to turn everything upside down is really quite confusing. We shouldn't have to be confused. Now, when I asked one of, or actually 4 of the project team a couple of weeks ago why this couldn't be fixed, they said, oh, it's expensive to print up some new maps. Well, this is just after they'd gone and printed up these construction staging core flutes and stuck them up all over the place. If there's money to put up these construction staging things, which are of interest, that's some good information in there. It's nice to see that, how the bridge is going to be built, but it's completely irrelevant if you want to be able to actually find your way from A to B, or in this case, from the northern side of the bridge to the southern side of the bridge, and to do so safely and conveniently. So please don't tell us there's no money to print up maps. When there's money to put these things up, there's money to pay someone to go out and put them up, there's money to put up this temporary fencing, which wasn't here previously. So, let's not have that excuse anymore. Right, where are these maps? Well, I'm just going to take one of them, which is down on the corner of Pierce Street and Jackson Street. And that arrow is pointing to where it's located. And this is the rough detour that we have to take in order to get to the other side of the bridge. And look at the detour as it's shown on the detour map. Essentially, it's completely upside down. Like I said, you have to look at this map and you have to rotate it in your mind. And then you have to remember that rotation in your mind. You have to remember all the turns, and not easy over a detour that's of a considerable distance. Now you can see up in the right hand corner what I've done is I'm showing which way the compass rose is pointing for this. What I did is I went to Apple Maps. I found they were the best site for doing this because I could actually rotate the map to where I wanted it to be. And it also showed nice, clear street names and all the rest of it. So if I can create in about 10 minutes a very simple detour map, I don't understand why main roads or the people who are being paid to do the traffic management can't go and engage some professionals who could do a much better job than I can. And that's just a close-up showing the difference in the compass roses between the lousy maps, which are confusing, and maps that would actually be of some use. They'll provide some value for money. The other thing I did is I put this detour into my phone, and we're all used to navigating using a GPS in the car or something like that. And what does it do? Well, as soon as you press go or start, the map turns around and orientates it to the direction that the car is facing. And as you proceed following the instructions, the map turns to the left or the right or whatever as you go. So in this case, I started off in Pierce Street. It's telling me to go straight ahead. And remember, I'm facing south here, but the map is facing or showing me the direction I'm heading in. Imagine if this map was done by the people that drew up the maps for the Fremantle Traffic Bridge project. This map would be facing the other way, and the arrow would be pointing down towards your feet or towards the brake and accelerator pedal, which would be pretty confusing and difficult to follow as you're trying to drive down the street. Now, as I turned left when I got to Tideman Road, look at what's happened. The map has rotated around, and obviously if I took the right-hand turn to go over to Queen Victoria Street, it would rotate yet again so that as I'm going over Queen Victoria Street is straight up and down. I mean, these are really basic concepts that we've had for, 20 years or so in our Garmins and Navmans and things like that, and in our smartphones. And yet for some reason, there's people on the Fremantle Traffic Bridge that never seem to have used a navigation system in their lives and have no clue that this exists and don't understand how orientation of maps works, which is quite astonishing. And I was really quite blown away when I was told, oh, look, the maps are correct because the north arrow is facing up. Now, it's 40 years since I was a young recruit down at HMAS Lewin, and we were taught how to do map reading, actually on the oval there, so not far away from the bridge project. And my memory is the reason that north arrow exists is so you can take out your compass, you can line the compass up with the grid lines on the map, and then you can rotate the map around until your compass needle is facing north and it matches the north on the map. And we won't go into magnetic north and all that other kind of stuff, but that's the general principle. And when you've done that, your map is then oriented to the ground. That's basic land navigation. That's orienteering. So, again, I'm just gobsmacked that the people responsible for putting up these maps don't get that basic idea. And YouTube is full of these orienting videos that will show you how this works. So don't just take it from me. Now, this is my just a quick attempt at drawing up a detour. What did I do here that's different? Well, the first thing is obviously this is a one-way detour if you're coming from the north. So I've put arrows on everything, or most of the turns, to show you where you're going. I've used red because it's nice and bright and bold, and people might argue about color usage and all the rest of it, but I've used fat lines and big arrows to very clearly, hopefully clearly show you where you're going. The other thing is I've used these street closed signs with the red circle with the red line through the middle of it to show where Beach Street is closed and also where the footpaths are closed on either side or leading up to the Fremantle Traffic Bridge, and marked those off in black to say they're no longer in use. The other thing is I've used the call out feature from PowerPoint just to put some extra information in there to make it clearer what's going on, about Beach Street is closed, etc. And if we want cyclists to use the footpath along Tideman Road when they exit out of Pierce Street, that should be called out. Is that part of the detour? Because there's no clarity when you get to the southern end of Pierce Street whether we're supposed to be riding on the footpath or whether we're supposed to go out on the road. So you can call out that kind of information on the maps and, tell people what they're supposed to be doing. And here's the idea of splitting the maps into one for cyclists and pedestrians that want to get to the other side of the bridge and one for bus users. So, this is just a zoomed in thing because this is all bus users need to know. They don't need to know about what's going on the other side of the bridge. They don't need to know about the cyclist detour. All a bus passenger is going to want to know is my bus stop open? And in this case, you can say, yep, if you're catching the 998, the 999 or the 107 going north or south, the bus stops on either side of the road are still open. However, the footpaths are closed from Swan Street heading south. So, you could print up half a dozen of these and put them around the intersection of Tideman Road and Queen Victoria Street, maybe down where Swan Street comes into Queen Victoria Street. This kind of information would just be useful for bus passengers, and it avoids clogging up the cycling maps with irrelevant information, because cyclists don't care about the bus stops and the bus users don't care about the cyclists. So just to recap again, so the maps on the northern side are all upside down. The maps need to be updated to remove the detour along Queen Victoria Street. That'll be the topic of another video coming up shortly. We could split the maps as we've just seen. Why not have a bus passenger map and a cyclist map? Someone needs to go and talk to Apple Maps and Google Maps and get them to update their cycling routes around this thing. And again, is someone going to remember to do this when the Fremantle traffic bridge is actually closed later in 2025 and demolished? Or are we going to see drivers following their Garmins, driving through fences and barricades and plunging into the Swan River because someone's forgot to tell Google Maps, oh yeah, the bridge is no longer there. You now need to go along Tideman Road and across the Stirling Highway Bridge. I'm sure someone's going to remember to do that, but someone's clearly forgotten to do it for the cycling maps. And I'm going to do a detour, I'm going to do a video on that showing what an absolute blundering mess it is at the moment, because that has not been done. I don't know if that's the responsibility of someone in Main Roads or the responsibility of one of the Alliance members who's constructing the bridge, but someone's got to do it. And I'm pretty sure that person is not me. And just to recap again, everything, all these problems that I've mentioned are just symptomatic of the poor quality of the work that's been done for cyclists. I mean, the whole idea of this bridge is to provide better transport connection for everyone. Car drivers, truck drivers, buses, cyclists, pedestrians, skateboarders, the whole lot. And yet, what are we seeing during the construction phase? An absolute schmozzle. And I was very interested to see in one of the local newspapers in the last couple of days, complaints about what's happening with the vehicle traffic and just the kind of whitewashing, the nice words that were uttered by, I guess, someone in Main Roads, the Department of Transport, about this. And yeah, it seems to be just a general level of, well, if car drivers aren't being looked after physically well, then we can see that cyclists are really at the bottom of the food chain. Anyway, next video is going to be on this useless loop. That'll be coming out sometime later this week. Thanks for watching.